Okay, welcome to the third episode of IT with Fatima. And today, it's going to be a little bit different. We're not going to be learning anything new. We will be learning something new, but we're going back in time, like way back in time. So today we're talking about the history of computing. Yay! And I want to go to the very basics, to the very first things that we count as computing. So let's start with ancient times, like really way back. And the first thing that people used to count with were their fingers. So could we say that the first computer or first way of computing, in a sense, was human fingers?
Yeah. Um, Kind of maybe what people don't know is that the word computer predates what we know as computers, right? The word computer used to mean somebody who counts. So that would be like a profession, for example. So in that way, of course, our fingers would be the first computers, and maybe our toes would be the second.
The second one. Yeah, that's where we started. We were back in the ancient times, we were using our fingers, which makes sense, like the some first person who was counting, I don't know, their cattle or something, was like, okay, I have fingers, I will use these. And the second part is, the next step. There probably are steps in between these two periods, but the next step I'm going to use is Roman Empire times. Very accurate timings, Roman Empire times. And the use of this machine called abacus.
Yeah. So an abacus is basically a counting machine. So we can take a look at one example over here. We used to have this or a replica at home when I was a kid. It was nice
Really?
because you could shake it and it made noises like for a
Right,
baby. But then it had this kind of counting feature as well. Of course, I didn't know how to use it back then. I just
right,
kind of remember the generic shape. And these were used, surprisingly, in many different cultures simultaneously. So
yeah. There was
uh,
this in China. In
yeah,
China, I think it's
Chinese used them, the Sumerians used them, Europeans used them. And then, of course, um, it kind of would depend on the numbering system that they would use, the structure of
right.
it. So for us, the we're using Arabic numbers, right? So in case you don't know that,
Right.
like
And I have
the
to be this actually, it's quite nice because it looks very simple, right? This is where we
yeah,
this is where we started. Then
yeah,
we ended up with very different machines.
yeah. Here we
But this
have
one,
a Roman
so we
example.
have these little balls. What is it? Little tiny balls,
Markers. Yeah,
markers,
that you would
and
slide.
we will use them to count. So, for example, if you're, I don't know, counting a cattle, lambs, or whatever, you would be like, I have one lamb, I have two lambs. So it was very convenient um, machine to keep on track,
Yeah,
doing basic math, basic subtracting and adding, counting, whatever it is.
yeah. Here you can see there are some inscriptions. So sorry, this one right here is an X. That stands for 10 in Roman numerals. And then on the left of that, we have a C. That stands for 100 in Roman numerals. And then clearly some of these beads have broken off.
Yeah,
Um,
beads.
yeah, in this case, they're beads, yeah, have broken
Little
off here.
balls.
That's kind of, yeah, interesting to see. So these would kind of depend on the numbering system that you would use. So if you would count in a Roman numbering system, it's going to be, of course, different than if you use Arabic numbers and so on. So fairly kind of fascinating, in my opinion, to see
Right.
this way.
So that was abacus, and like you mentioned, it was used in different. It was used. It was just not an unique to Roman Empire or Roman
Yeah,
people.
all over the world.
It was used by Chinese, Sumerians. So there was a lot of simultaneous inventions happening in math,
Yeah,
discoveries in math back in the days, way back in the days. So people in
yeah,
China would discover something in a relatively same time period as people in Roman Empire.
yeah. And why is that? Well, because the world was not as global as now, right? So these civilizations more or less lived in somewhat, isolated worlds. Of course, there would be, trade and traffic going between them, but it was more of an exception than the rule. But the pressure was there. So these civilizations were, very roughly speaking, advancing simultaneously. So they would have the need simultaneously to count, compute things,
Right.
and then
Right.
they needed to fix that somehow. So they somewhat simultaneously, within centuries, at
Right.
least,
And I think that's
invented
happening
these things.
nowadays as well, but it's harder to prove since when you have an idea, you can just Google it or look it up on the internet. And if somebody already had that idea, even though you had the idea, it's still simultaneous
Yeah.
invention, discovery, but it's harder to, we don't say, we don't, it's not convenient for us to be
Well,
like, hey, we
it's
discovered this in Finland and then we discovered this in Portugal in the same time, because there's so much traffic, networking happening all the time, so we're not so isolated
right.
anymore.
Yeah. So now, kind of, if let's say that you would independently discover some new theorem, so in the scientific society, it is basically your obligation to check, has somebody else discovered this previously, and then it's too bad, right? So you just refer to that previous discovery. But if there is no communication, if there is no way to find that out, then of course your discovery is valid. And the same thing has happened a lot. And it's basically diminishing as a function of communication. So, for example, Newton and Leibniz both discovered integrals or linear algebra, right? Or even, yeah, derivatives simultaneously in the UK and in Germany. And we still suffer from that. As well as during the Cold War, mathematics and communication theory inventions were made simultaneously, roughly, in the US or in the Western world and in the Soviet world. But now that
Right.
we're more or less one global happy family, we
Right.
don't really get that anymore.
Right. Right. And it would be funny if we had, like, I don't know, people living in the moon, and they would be totally isolated, and we would kind of like see if they would come up with similar things as we on the earth. Okay,
There
continuing
is
to the
this.
industrial age. And
There is
John,
this.
right, where
Just
is
just saying.
what is, I never even, I think I've heard this idea or this concept in like a some mock movie or like a, I don't know, like a parody movie,
Yeah, there was this Finnish movie, kind of
right?
homemade.
Is
That
this a
was
real thing?
no, it's just a joke.
No, but it was this like a, did they have
No,
like a
no.
need to go did they want to go to the moon or whatever? Okay, let's not go there. That's a whole different uh sub part of history. Okay, so industrial age, starting with John Napier, who came up with logarithms, and
Yeah.
the machine that Napier was famous for is called Napier's bones. Let's
Yep.
let's look what John Napier gave to the world.
And that's what it looked like roughly.
I
In
still, I kind of, I have to mention that what I don't like this selfie age is that we don't have these cool portraits anymore. How cool
Yeah.
it would be to be like, you only had like one photo of you your whole lifetime if you were a wealthy person, and it would be like a huge painting of you, and
Mhm.
that's it. I think that would be cool. Okay,
So
so
yeah,
Napier's bones.
that's what they look like. So basically, it's a multiplication table, right? So you would have the multiplication table of 9 here, right? So 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 2 is 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63,
Right.
and so
Yeah,
on,
this was
right? So
this was
again,
Napier's
fairly
bones.
simple for us, but maybe a real help,
And
so that
back
you
in
don't
the
need to.
back in 19 1600,
1500.
this was a big thing. So thank you, John Napier. And then continue forward, 1621, we were given the idea of slide rule, and it was
Yeah,
Edmund Gunter. Oh no, 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 no. Let me check. No, it was William Ogthred who invented the slide rule. But before that, there was Edmund Gunter who invented the logarithm scales. So it was
okay.
lines etched on metal or wood, and that was kind of
Yeah.
like, I think,
So
building on top of the Napier's invention.
this is slide rule. Yeah. So this is what
Slide
that
rule,
looks like. Um,
and this
so
was invented of William Ogthred.
yeah,
And this was actually a
uh,
funny fact about this one. It was used up until the mid 1970s, when the first handheld microcomputers appeared. This was a
yeah.
really
So
long. We were. It was it was an invention that was needed, and it was used up until 1970s, which is really cool, I think.
yeah. So this was actually we've had these at home when I was a kid. So that's kind of how old I am, right? So think about the time in the 80s when
Can't think because I wasn't there, but I can
we
think.
didn't have home computers, right? So there were some calculators, but even the calculators were fairly simple. So doing logarithms is actually surprisingly difficult, right? So at least in your head or with pen and paper. So this was used for that. So the way it works is that you basically shift the middle part to the number that decides which logarithm you want, log 2 or log 4 or log 10. And then you take this plastic piece and then put it to the number which is logarithm you want to have, and then it'll show on the other side what the actual logarithm is. Right? So that's basically so somebody has basically
Where did people use?
pre-calculated
What was the context? Because your parents
logarithms.
were
Engineering, architecting,
right,
anywhere where you need to like do strength um, or stability calculations.
right,
A
right.
lot of this is like a basic tool for engineers still in the 70s.
Yeah,
You'd
like I said.
be in
So
your
thank you,
briefcase.
Thread, for your gift to the world of slide rule. All
And
right.
it's surprising that nowadays, like for people born in the 90s or afterwards, it's really difficult to understand why this needed to exist. It's like
Right.
it
Right.
seems so far away. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like it's not like this is something I would be totally like, what is this? How would I use this? It's not people who are born in the 90s, we're not too far from the. You have to remember that even I didn't have um widely used. I didn't have phone. I mean, we had a phone, but it wasn't mine, and it was like those brick Nokias. And it's not like we grew up with Netflix and constant stream of internet stuff as well. I think we're the last generation who didn't. So I also um remember in school that it felt very distant from today's digitalization. So just to hold my people's flag high up, we're not too we're not born in the 2000s. Let's say that. Okay, so continuing onward, that was slide rule. If you have any questions more about slide rule, we'll include some links so you can go and learn about slide rule. I think it would be very hipster thing to be like as a mathematician who's like refuses to use a calculator on things that you can calculate, check with slide rule, and just use slide rule. I think that would be
So
cool.
that's actually a good thing because that you said that, because mathematicians don't use slide rules even or stuff. Computers do, right?
Right,
A
right,
mathematician doesn't really work with numbers that much. It's more about creating formulas. But whereas
right,
a
right, right.
computer would actually implement those
No,
formulas
but
using
you get
numbers.
my point. You get my
Yeah, yeah.
point.
Just
All right.
wanted to make counterpoint.
Thank you for your counterpoint. All right. Continuing. 1642, Blaise Pascal, who invented a machine called Pascaline at the age of 19, which I think is really cool. I think I hope I had half of the brain of Blaise Pascal when I was 19. So Pascaline was like the first adding machine calculator that we had. Actually,
Yeah.
it was the first one.
Yeah,
I
here we
think it's cool
go.
that he named it Pascaline. That's what I would do if I came up with like a um something. I would name it after my name. And funny fact about this: he actually invented this machine to help his mathematician father with his calculations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So here we have one that's apparently signed by Blaise Pascal himself. Can't make
I think
out.
that's imagine coming up with something like that at the age of 19.
Yeah, pretty cool. But that's what it looked
Pretty
like,
cool.
and it's basically a addition
Yeah, addition
machine.
subtracting machine. So it couldn't.
Yeah, addition is just or subtraction is just addition of a
Mm,
positive negative number. Right. So addition is what it
right.
does.
And it could perform multiplication and division to repeated addition or subtraction.
Yeah, exactly. So like multiplication is just repeated addition, and then division is actually asking how many times do I have to subtract something until I get to
Right,
zero.
right.
So that kind of makes sense. Pascal is also known by other stuff, right? So again, we have a very nice portrait here.
I mean,
Um,
can we go back to this? I think that would be cool.
yeah, this instead of selfies.
Yeah, like really. Imagine just like one cool painting of you. That's it.
Yeah. So what is interesting with Pascal is that he was also a philosopher. He lived in the same age as Descartes, whom we know as one of the big philosophers, but
Big
he was also a
names.
mathematician. And a lot of things are thanks to him. So we have, for example, the probability theory that is based on largely Pascal's work, and then also some geometry. and then stuff like arithmetical triangles or Pascal's triangle,
So if you
which
ever
gives
feel
us
like
all. Hmm?
you haven't accomplished anything in life, just go and read this, and you'll feel that even more.
Yeah. So these Pascal's triangle gives us the binomial coefficients. So which is very nice. A lot of
Physics,
things in
fluid
physics,
dynamics. Yeah, this
pressure.
feels
We still know Pascal, right, as the measure of pressure, atmospheric pressure is given in pascals. And then, of course, we know the Pascal programming language,
right.
which is one of the first programming languages I learned. I think the third or fourth. It's very big in like the 90s. And then only got basically we got rid of that once Microsoft came out with Visual Basic, and then Java actually finally, uh, came out
Right.
with a
I didn't
proper
know that.
object-oriented language.
All right.
So,
Thank you, Blaise Pascal.
yeah,
Uh, Someone who did a, a lot. And afterwards, continuing into 1673, we have this dude called Gottfried von Leibniz, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who invented
Leibniz.
differential Leibniz,
Yeah,
who
Leibniz.
invented differential and integral calculus, and is the father of invention of Leibniz wheel, or the
Yeah,
reckoner. And it could add or subtract, but also divide and multiply, which was kind of like the next step from the Pascal machine. Even though Pascal machine could do this based on multiple
repetition.
addition or subtraction, this was actually a machine that was the next step from Pascal's machine. So
Yeah, so
Leibniz.
Leibniz is a big person. I think
Oh, I have to say, the hair.
mm.
I think I think I think
It-
people nowadays dress way too boringly.
we don't
I
use
would
wigs
give a lot
anymore.
of money to have someone who looks like Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz to teach me math. I think that's cool.
So yeah, so Leibniz was a really big and really important person, a true kind of polymath, working in all kinds of disciplines, from mathematics, philosophy, to politics, as well, to ethics. So a proper philosopher, biology, medicine, just name it.
And it said
Um,
in there that Leibniz has been called the last universal genius due
yeah,
to his
yeah,
knowledge and
yeah.
skills in different fields.
And
That's
it's partially due to the age, right? Because this was kind of the last moments before the Industrial Revolution took
right.
over and things started to be mechanized. So this was still based on kind of proper analog stuff. So he did pretty much all kinds of stuff. I think we know him most from derivatives and integrals.
In the rows, right?
So that's kind of,
Leibniz wheel.
or
That's also
calculus.
right.
Yeah. So kind of one of the problems that we have is in calculus is that we have two different notations for notating both differentials and derivatives. And that's due to Newton and Leibniz separately creating the same invention, and then they used different notations to write it down. So if you're ever struggling with the different notations, you can blame two of the greatest geniuses that have ever lived for that: Newton and Leibniz. We know a little bit, or at least in my opinion, we don't get taught as much about Leibniz as Newton. Newton kind of, everybody knows the story about the apple
Right.
falling.
Yeah,
from
that's
trivial.
true. That's true actually. I think we
And
should yeah.
yeah,
I think we should maybe include Leibniz more. I think Isaac Newton has been on the spotlight way more.
yeah, and he was they were fighting about who invented this first, Newton or Leibniz. I guess nowadays we kind of agree that they did it simultaneously.
Were they
But yeah,
fighting, or
not
were we
directly,
people
but
fighting?
yeah, yeah. So they, as far as I understand, they didn't like each other very much.
But
So,
what's weird to me is that a genius at this level, you would think that he wouldn't care. He would just be way too smart to get annoyed. So it feels cool. It feels nice that even Leibniz had people whom he didn't like and had different opinions. You know, you get my point. Like if you're a
yeah,
genius, you it would we would think that you're some kind of also like a spiritual guru in a sense of when it comes to you get my point. It's
mhm,
cool to hear that. Thank you Leibniz for fighting with Newton or whatever.
yeah. So kind of what is interesting here from the computation point of view is that Leibniz also apparently introduced the binary numeral system first, and that of course
Oh yes,
that
I have
didn't,
it here.
yeah, that doesn't really matter yet that much in this case, but otherwise it would be impossible for us to try to do things with electronics, right? So we use binary basically in computers, meaning that if there is no current, if there's no electricity on a wire, then it's zero. And then if there is electricity, it's a one.
One.
And that's basically how all of the computing works with electronics. So we can again thank Leibniz for that. But he did like so many things. He understood that there could be this kind of logic in how to do computations, which is basically algorithms. So even though he didn't know about computers and stuff, algorithmic kind of information theory started back then, even though he didn't have those names for that. Lagrangian interpolation, way before Lagrange. Um, the calculus framework that he created actually already anticipated that there could be this kind of generic computer, even though he didn't understand, he didn't know how to write, but he kind of understood that in theory we could have something like that. So it is
That's
a
pretty
real,
advanced for a dude born in 16 when this is the Leibniz
yeah. We got the
16
reckoner. Just hold on, I'm gonna figure out. He was born in 1646.
1646. That's
So this is
pretty
the reckoner
advanced.
or a replica, of course.
Leibniz wheel
Yeah,
or the step reckoner.
yeah. So this was able to do um, the proper multiplications and divisions basically in one go, using exactly the kind of logic that we were talking about previously, right? So instead of
Right.
having to repeat the addition or subtraction, it would position the levers into such a place that it can do it in one step. And that's why it was called the kind of stepped reckoner.
Right. Right. All right. On to 1725. We have Basile Bouchon, who invented the Bouchon loom by observing the paper rolls with punched holes that was used in this machine made for weaving patterns
Yeah,
for
yeah. Now I got you. So
so
looms, right?
yeah, it was the Bouchon loom.
Cool.
And by observing his father's work, who worked in the textile industry, or no textile industry, not textile industry.
Music.
He worked with organs, I think.
Yeah, he
I
played
have
the
to
organ.
check. Sorry.
Yeah, his father played the organ.
Right. Right. So, um, by observing his father's work, he learned to adapt the methods his father used in his work to come up with his own version. And this is the bush and loom. But there was some issues with this. It didn't work properly, or there was something.
So there is one week. Well, first of
There
all,
was
let's kind of talk about what
something
this
that
is.
didn't kind of work properly, or there was some part that didn't work as conveniently, so it didn't immediately caught on, but the idea was great. And
Yeah. So what does this do?
so
So what it does is it creates a loom, or the
yes,
loom creates a textile um, with a pattern.
right,
So there is this paper with small holes in it, and
right,
whenever there's a hole, then the thread will go through there, and if there's no hole, then the basic thread, the background color, is going to
right.
be used for that. So
Is that the same idea of kind of like, if there's an electric signal, it goes
kinda,
through,
yeah,
and if
exactly. But
there's a
now it's
block,
just a
it doesn't.
textile. So we're doing
Right,
a pattern using different colored uh, threads, right?
right.
So if you take a look at this loom, what would you say is the most fragile part?
It's the paper.
Right. So that was the problem here. So if we're pulling these threads through these holes, then over time they will tear, and then you can't really reuse this for the same this for multiple times. Where else
Right.
have you seen these kinds of papers with holes in them?
Papers with holes in it.
Yeah, these kinds of things.
I think is this is related to computing, right? Because
Could
if it's
be.
related, it's obviously the punch cards.
Yeah. So that's why we're
Don't go
talking
there yet.
about.
Don't go there yet. We
No,
have
no,
a
not yet.
order.
No. But what else?
What else?
Yeah.
Paper with
There-
holes in it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There used to
Seriously.
be these automated pianos in the 1800s that would play automatically
Right?
keys based on these kinds of paper sheets as well.
Yeah, I
So it has been used for encoding information. Just Bouchon was the first one to figure that out. But
right.
yeah, very, very nice
And then we're
stuff.
continuing on the Falcon loom, which is kind of like the next step from the Bouchon loom. It's called Falcon loom.
Falson.
Falson. Falcon. Falson loom. You can see which one of us speaks multiple languages and which one doesn't. So both of the Bouchon loom and the fa, Falsum loom,
Mhm.
they didn't really caught on due to technicality and practical issues, and it was same with the don't go there yet, the Falcon. So, however, in 1745, Joseph Marie Zaguard, did I say that right?
Jacquard.
Zaguard combined these ideas of the continuous punched roll and the durable punch cards. So the Bouchon loom had a good idea with the continuous punch roll, and in Falson loom, it was Falsum loom, right?
Yeah,
There was a good idea of this idea of durable punch cards, so the punch cards who didn't break, I think.
yeah,
And Jaguar, what he did, he kind of like combined these ideas and came up with something that actually worked. So this programmable loom worked by weaving operating weaving operating system that was controlled by punch cards that were tied together to form a long loop. Yes. And this was actually successful. This was very successful. So my point is that even though the Boujon loom and the Falchon loom, it didn't really work out. The ideas were there, and this is what science is. Somebody has idea and you build on top of it, right? This is
Yeah, exactly. So
so
here you can
even though
see.
it didn't work out, it was still meaningful. So next time
Yeah,
you have a bad idea or idea that doesn't really work, don't just throw it on the trash. Maybe in 100 years or 200 years, some white dude will come up with something that actually works. Okay, so this was actually a huge thing. What Jaguar did, it had a huge impact on the weaving industry back in the days. So, and this guy, can you show his face?
again. Okay.
Where he, I didn't see. I need to see the portrait. I really need to see the wig to really get the
Okay.
vibe.
He was in uh,
Jaguar loom.
yeah.
Where's the guy?
He,
Oh,
he was here.
there's no wig. What a shame.
No, I think we're kind of
Are
but
we
it's
past the wigs already? Yeah, we're in the 18.
yeah, but this was produced using a jacquard loom.
Right. And this was, yeah, it was like I said, but this was not he came up, this was in, when was this guy born? When did he born?
There we go. 1752
Right. And the machine? Oh,
was
1752.
in
Oh, I had a
the
very
machine.
I had a wrong year here. So previously I
The
said
machine was in
1745.
1804.
So the machine, so ignore what I said earlier about I had a wrong year here. So it's 1804 when he came up with this machine.
Or
And
at least
then
that's when he patented it. So
I
could of
didn't
course
hear you.
that's when he patented the machine. So he could have invented it earlier.
Right. So thank you, Jaguar, for your impact on the weaving industry and computing. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. Then we will get to my favorite topic, which is we are in 18. Oh, what's in the here? In the there's something in between.
No, there's many things in between here. This is
Right.
just a more complete list.
So
You have the basic things.
we're ignore Xavier and we are going to Charles Babbage and differential machine.
Yeah.
So Charles Babbage was actually known as the father of modern computer, and he came up with something that was very remarkable, very advanced, and he called it the analytical engine, and it was
Yeah.
like the first computer that could really, in theory, be like a general purpose computer. In theory, it never it was never built, but due to the very detailed drawings and the way Babbage has described this, it was um, well documented due to very detailed drawings and explanations of how it would actually work. So the term a general purpose computer comes actually from another a great person in the computing science world, which is Alan Turing, and he
Mhm.
came up with this term. I just wanted to put that out there, and it means that it could compute anything that can be computed by any modern computer. But it was never built, but it was It was the first. It was the first one, and and we yeah, because we now know, we didn't know that back then, but we now know that the basic operations that Babbage described that this machine could do would mean that it could compute anything a modern computer could, which is great for a guy in 1800s to come up with a machine. And I have to mention, its CPU, central processing unit, is actually called the mill, and it was 15. I have to check. Where's my book? It was 15 feet long, I think. Let me check here. Which is really cool, I think. Compare what's the size of like a normal central process, a CPU of like a MacBook?
Well, it is the block
Yeah,
is
it was
actually
15 feet long, tall.
the block is basically yay maybe 1-2 inches each side, but that's mostly just for wiring. So the actual CPU inside is much smaller.
Why would we drop the term mill? I think that's cool. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, Babbage. And
this is
afterwards,
actually a little bit longer of a story. So we kind of started off with
it
the
is, it
difference
is,
engine.
it is a very, it's longer. So you think should we
We could actually, yeah, we could start with Babbage's difference engine in the next episode,
right?
and then talk about, because there are lots of kind of interesting things about this, and then also going towards the analytical engine next,
And
and
then of course we will
talk
talk
about our
about
favorite person. Yeah,
Ada Lovelace, which I have to mention, our daughter, or a younger daughter, is named after Ada Lovelace. So we're a
yeah,
huge fan of her.
yeah. These three things kind of go together, and I don't think we have enough time for
Yeah,
that
we don't have enough time. So next
today.
time we
So
will start with analytical engine, Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace, and we will continue from there. Thank you for joining us. I hope you learned something actually from this episode, and lots of cool wigs. That's I have to mention. Lots of cool wigs in this episode. All right. Thank you for joining us. Are you gonna do the outro?
yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week.
So then, bye.